Susan Perez. Here. Mona Pascual-Rogers. Here. Ramon Rubalcava. Here. Bill Slayton. Here. And Karen Green-Ross for Betty He. Here.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the board timed agenda. Do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Taylor, second by Ms. Hollinger. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The item passes. Thank you. The next item is Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Bill Slayton to lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on the agenda is the President's report, and before I make my brief remarks, I would like to welcome Irena Ortega, the new Cal HR Director, as a member of this board. So welcome. Okay. I'd like to preview some topics that this board will be focusing on in the coming months. Between May and August, we will be partnering with the CFA Institute and the Council of Institutional Investors to deliver 3 investment education sessions for the board. These sessions will officially kick off next month with an overview of risk and return fundamentals, followed in June by the role of our private asset classes, and then in August, we will focus on public asset classes and asset allocation. We'll also be hearing from our internal team leaders on each of these issues to put CalPERS' own strategies into perspective. We look forward to the presentations and discussions and thank Ben and his team for undertaking this work. Our investments can be very complex. I believe this education will benefit our new board members and be a good refresher for all of us, as well as our stakeholders. So those are my brief comments for this morning. I'll turn to Ms. Frost for her comments.
All right. Good morning, President Jones and members of the board. I also want to take an opportunity to welcome Irena Ortega to the board. The team looks forward to working with you. So the bulk of this month's board agenda has really been focused on finance and health, although on Monday you did get an economic overview from our Chief Investment Officer, which I think was really helpful. So this morning I will touch briefly on the state and school contribution rates, and then also an update on healthcare negotiations, as well as some internal and external engagement activities. So yesterday, you received the recommended employer contribution rates for state agencies and school employers. They provide employers with actual rates on what to expect for the next fiscal year. They factor in the final year of the discount rate reduction for the state, which is now at 7%, and then the second year for the schools and public agencies. The contribution rates are increasing in line with our original projections, and in anticipation of those increases, we have been working with our employers around the state to help them understand what those increases will look like over the next 5 years. So the primary reason for the increasing rates are the discount rate reduction, the normal progression of the payments on the unfunded liability, and also rising employer payroll costs. For the state, the increase has been somewhat mitigated to the fact that we did receive an additional $6 billion to help pay down the unfunded liability. The additional payments, I think, are a real good example of why the team has been working so closely with the employers to understand that making additional payments, the benefits of really doing that for the long term. Some employers obviously don't have the ability to make those kinds of short-term payments, but there really is a positive effect when they're not financing that debt at 7%. So in addition to the payment toward the unfunded liability, the state plan was also able to realize additional savings related to PEPRA membership. PEPRA membership obviously is a less expensive plan in relationship to the classic plan. So we are starting to realize some of the savings of the PEPRA changes that came in 2013. We will continue to work with our employers to provide all of the relevant information that they need to plan for the contribution rate changes, and again, encourage them to reach out to our actuaries if they have any questions about their valuations. And speaking of our actuaries, they are working on a tool that we'll be testing with the employers and we'll be bringing before this board in the next few months. And it's a tool that will help the employers understand the sensitivity analysis when certain actuarial assumptions are not hit, such as the discount rate. So if we don't hit a 7% discount rate or assumed rate of return and we hit a 5% assumed rate of return, what does that do to the contribution rates? So they'll be able to do that through a very interactive tool that the actuaries are finalizing now. On the healthcare front, negotiations for the 2020 premium rates for all plans are underway. In May, you will be presented the preliminary rates during the Pension and Health Benefits Committee, and then we'll bring back final rates in June for your approval. That will be followed by open enrollment in the fall with new health premiums and any plan changes taking effect in January 1, 2020. As always, the focus here at CalPERS is to promote high-value care, improving the health of our members, their families, and the communities where they live, and also reducing the overuse of ineffective or unnecessary medical care. So some of the engagement activities, earlier this month, I was able to participate on a panel with health priorities for corporations and major purchasers like CalPERS at Fortune Magazine's Brainstorm Health event. And I sat on a panel moderated by Ariana Huffington, along with some individuals from JP Morgan Chase, SAP, and an analytics company called Qualtrics, which was really interesting, learned some things there. They have some interesting perspectives around driving change and innovation. And for those of you who haven't been following some recent work done by Ariana Huffington, you should look up her Thrive Index. I think you would find that really interesting, considering human capital management is one of the priorities of this system. I was able to talk about the importance of taking a balanced approach to quality and cost, and to emphasize how the information in our data warehouse really informs the decisions, and we can look at trend data as we are going into rate negotiations, again, with that balance of quality and cost. I also had the chance to emphasize the role we hope to play in the healthcare marketplace to drive change through our future investments in biotech and healthcare technology. Last week, I visited with the Professional Firefighters Association. They were here in town in Sacramento at their legislative conference. And I did share a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last 2 to 3 years to strengthen the fund. And we also covered some of the bills that we're tracking. And Danny Brown will be giving you a more full update on those bills in his update. At the end of this month, I will be on a panel at the Milken Institute Global Conference to address the importance of defined benefit plans. And I know some of you are registered to attend that, so I hope you will join that session. And, you know, for me, I'm always looking for opportunities to talk about the importance of defined benefit plans for, you know, financial security and retirement. My belief is that a defined benefit plan is really the only way to secure that retirement that our public workers have worked so hard for. And this panel will also give me a chance to talk about our mission and our commitment to California's public servants. And then finally, we have another diversity forum to look forward to on June 10th and 11th here in Sacramento. We're co-hosting the event again this year with CalSTRS. And at this juncture, we have about 100 attendees who have registered to attend. We will have speakers and panelists from a number of financial and academic institutions, so I hope to see many of you there as well. And then one last item to mention, and that's the CalPERS Sustainability Report we discussed last month. This report describes our efforts to implement sustainability as a risk mitigation tool across our portfolio. It is now available as a handout and available on our website. And now for the monthly performance update of the Public Employees Retirement Fund as of February 28th of 2019. The total fiscal year to date, regardless of Ben's quarterly performance, is at 1.5. The rolling one-year return of the fund is 1.7. The 3-year return is 9.4. The 5-year return is 5.9. And the 10-year return is 9.6. And that does conclude my remarks, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Seeing no question, thank you for the report, Ms. Frost. The next item on the agenda, action consent items. We have 2 items. The first one is the Board of Administration meeting minutes. Do we have a motion? Moved by Ms. Taylor, second by Mr. Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes. Next item on the agenda is board travel, 6B, approval, and note that you do have a updated travel request in your folder. So do we have a motion? Moved by Mr. Fechner, second by Ms. Hollinger. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes. The next item is information consent items. I've received no request to remove anything from consent, so we will now go to committee reports and actions. The first one is Investment Committee. I call on the chair, Mr. Bill Slayton.
There we go. All right. Investment Committee met on April 15th. The committee approved the following. Agenda item 7A, staff recommendation to adopt an opposed position on Assembly Bill 1320, Nazarian, from opposed position on the bill regarding Turkish investment vehicles. Committee received a report on the following topic, a review of the private equity co-investments. Committee heard public comment on the following topic, the California code encompassing closed session materials and a call for more transparency around the governance of private equity. This time I'd like to share some highlights of what to expect at the May Investment Committee meeting. We'll be doing an investment education workshop. The next meeting of the Investment Committee is scheduled for May 13th, 2019 in Sacramento, California. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. The next item is the Pension and Health Benefits Committee. For that, I call on the chair, Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Pension Health Benefits Committee met on April 16, 2019. The committee recommends, and I move, the board approve the following. Agenda item 6A, approve proposed revisions to section 599.518 of the Public Employees Medical and Hospitalization Care Act regulations to allow extensions to the time frames for an administrative review of an adverse health benefit determination upon showing of good cause.
On the motion of the committee, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item passes.
Agenda item 6B, approve proposed technical and non-substantive amendments to the California Code of Regulations, section 599.501-599.516, affecting the health benefits program administered by CalPERS.
On the motion of the committee, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item passes.
Agenda item 6C, approve the long-term care LIFT program.
On the motion of the committee, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item passes.
The chair directed staff to review prior appeals to determine if there were any affected by the previous time frame extension regulation. Review reference for sections that may be impacted by the amendments proposed in agenda item 6B. The committee received reports on the following topics. The committee approved the proposed changes of the PHBC delegation. The committee received information on CalPERS opioid management. At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the May PHBC meeting. The committee will receive information on healthcare cost trends and 2020 health rates. The next meeting of the PHBC is scheduled for May 14th, 2019 in Sacramento, California. That concludes my report, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. I did receive a request to speak on an item that we've already acted on, so I'm going to complete the committee reports, and then we'll come back and allow you to speak on that item. The next item on the agenda is the Finance and Administration Committee. I call on that the chair, Ms. Taylor. This is.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Administration Committee met on April 16, 2019. The committee recommends, and I move, the board approve the following. Agenda item 4B, approve the April 2019 prospective report of solicitations, contracts, purchase orders, and letters of engagement, and approve the proposed revisions to the Board of Administration contract activity reporting policy.
On motion of committee, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item passes.
Agenda item 4C, approve the 1959 Survivor Benefit Program actuarial valuation report as of June 30th, 2018, and corresponding transmittal letter to the governor and the legislature.
On motion of committee, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item passes.
On agenda item 6B, approve the proposed elected board member percentages of time to be spent on board-related duties based on board and committee selections held in February and March of 2019.
On the motion of the committee, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item passes.
Agenda item 6C, adopt the state employer and member contribution rates for the period of July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020.
On motion of the committee, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item passes.
And agenda item 6D, adopt an employer contribution rate of 20.733% for the schools pool and a member contribution rate of 7% for the school's employees, subject to the Public Employees Pension Reform Act of 2013 for the period of July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020.
On motion of the committee, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes.
In addition, the committee reviewed the delegation from the board to the committee and has recommended changes that will be brought to the board today for approval along with other committee delegations. The chair directed staff to provide a written legal opinion on possible 1090 conflict regarding fiduciary insurance. The chair also directed staff to provide historical data costs for real assets performance fees. Also to bring back an agenda item in May to discuss discuss vacancy rate cost savings in the budget. Discuss including vacancy rate cost savings in the budget. And finally, the chair directed staff to provide the board with projected versus actual 2019 to 2020 state employer contribution rates and include comparisons in the future agenda items. The committee received a report on the following topics: semi-annual health plan financial report. And at this time, I'd like to share some highlights of what to expect at the May Finance and Administration Committee meeting. We're going to be looking over the Treasury Management Policy, the Treasury Management Reserve Policy, and the 2019-20 Annual Budget Proposal second reading, and the Annual Stakeholder Perception Survey Report. The next meeting of Finance and Administration Committee is scheduled for May 14th, 2019 in Sacramento, California. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Taylor.
President Jones,
Yes.
I believe Chair Taylor missed the third item, agenda item 6A.
Oh, I did. My mic's off.
Just a minute. Okay, good.
Okay, the committee recommends and I move the board approve the following. Agenda item 6A, approve the first reading of the 2019-20 annual budget in the amount of $1.898 billion and 2,875 positions.
On the motion of the committee, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes. Thank you, Ms. Frost.
Thank you, Ms. Frost.
Okay, so there was no meeting for performance compensation and talent management, risk and audit, and board governance, so therefore no reports. So before we go to item 9, I'm going to allow Mr. Jerry Fountain to come and speak on item 6B. Would you come up? And you will have 3 minutes to make your comments, and the timer is here to help you gauge your comment time.
Thank you. I'm Jerry Fontaine, Chief Financial Officer for the California State Retirees, and I thank you, President Jones, for this opportunity and the fact that you backed up your agenda. I appreciate that. Board members, my comments have to do with the board travel approval, aren't necessarily directed at the destinations. Over the past week or so, I've had an opportunity to speak with the board member about a meeting that was approved and conducted, and I found the information very beneficial. It increased my understanding of the need for the board to reach out to other organizations in other countries to monitor the investments of CalPERS. Having said that, I think it would be very beneficial to the members if, in a small way, we could get a report of who, what, why, and where of the meetings that are held in other countries, other organizations throughout the states. Having said that, that pretty much concludes my comments, and I would just appreciate you giving some thought to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And Ms. Frost, let's plan to have that on the Board Governance Committee meeting for discussion. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we go to item 9, and we have approval of committee delegation. Mr. Jacobs.
Good morning, President Jones and board members. This is simply the annual review of the committee delegations that we do every year. I guess that's why they call it annual. And so this brings together all of the changes to the delegations that have been recommended by the various committees in February and March. Several committees did not recommend any change to the delegations, but this item brings all of those delegations together for a vote up or down by the board to adopt those recommendations or not. So the staff recommends approval.
Okay. So seeing no questions, do we have a motion?
I move approval.
Moved by Ms. Taylor, second by Mr. Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes. Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Jacobs. We move now to item B, proposed decisions of administrative law judges, and we have on the phone Mr. Sharad Shah, our counsel for administrative law judges' decisions. Mr. Shah, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Mr. President,
Okay.
members of the board.
Okay, good morning. So for this item 9B, I'll call on Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. Okay, agenda items 9B1 through 9B9. We recommend that the board adopt the PDs at agenda items 9B1 through 9 with minor modifications argued by staff to agenda items 9B4 through 6 and 9B8. If the board agrees with our recommendations, then I move to adopt the proposed decision, if we're ready, at agenda items 9B1 through 9, with the minor modifications argued by staff to agenda items 9B4 through 6 and 9B8.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Oh, Mr. Miller. Second by Mr. Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes. Go to 9C.
So on agenda items 9C1 through 9C4, I move to deny the petitions for reconsideration at agenda items 9C1 through 9C4.
Second?
Second.
Mrs. Hollinger. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes. Thank you. Ms. Taylor. Okay, we move now to item 9D, nomination for CalPERS board member seat on outside boards. Ms. Simpson.
Just wrestling some furniture here. Thank you very much, Board President, board members. This item is requesting the board to consider the opportunity to put forward a candidate to the board of the International Corporate Governance Network. Dana Hollinger has served for the last 2 years on the board of ICGN, and CalPERS has a very long-standing relationship with the organization. We have James Andrus on staff participating as a co-chair of a committee, and we make great use of their best practices and research in many markets around the world on corporate governance. And the reason for that work is to better protect our members' assets. The organization looks at capital market stability through improved corporate governance, and of course, that contributes to improved corporate performance. The ICGN has opened up a call for nominations. The way the process works is they have a nominating committee, and that committee looks at any candidates that come forwards to look for gender balance, regional representation, and the right mix of skills. This year, they're looking particularly for candidates who have experience in the corporate sector and also knowledge of how corporate governance works in Asia. That said, the timing for this board meeting and their call for nominations was very tight, and so the organization has extended the nominating period to the end of April in order that CalPERS has an opportunity to consider whether you would like to put a member forwards. I'd further draw your attention to a comment in the board agenda item, which is that if CalPERS decides not to put forward a candidate to be considered, we still have full access to the best practices, the research, the opportunity to attend networking meetings, learn from the webinars and other publications that ICGN puts forwards, so we don't lose the benefit of our member participation. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Yeah, we have a few requests to speak. Ms. Hollinger?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed my service on the ICGN board. It was inspiring to see the global influence ICGN brings to governance across capital markets worldwide. And I step down now and in the hopes that one of my other fellow board members will lead the charge. But I've really brought a lot of those tools back here, as well as knowledge of capital markets, and being able to bring that feedback back to my fellow board members and to CalPERS. So thank you.
Ms. Taylor.
Yes, I want to thank Ms. Hollinger for her service on the board, and we appreciate it, and we appreciate the information you brought back to us. I think this is something that we can look at moving forward in board governance in terms of whom we should talk about. But yes, I agree that I don't know if this is an action item, so I'd like to move that we go ahead and
Adopt this report.
pardon me?
Just adopt this report. Go ahead and move it.
Move this item.
Yeah. Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Taylor. Is it second by Mr. Miller? We have a couple of questions. Mr. Slayton.
Yeah, so what's the deadline on making a nomination? Make sure I understand.
31st of April.
21st of April.
31st.
31st of
End
April.
of this month.
30th.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry. How many? I would love an extra day in April, and I'm making that bid right now.
hey, we start with the 1st of April, which is called something, so.
No excuse. I should be able to count. It's
So-
the end of the month, the
So
end of April.
while it'd be great to be able to discuss this in governance, the fact is we don't have a governance committee scheduled between now and the deadline
Correct.
for making a nomination. So if we choose not to proceed with the nomination today, then we will not have the opportunity to nominate
That's
someone.
correct.
Is that correct?
It would be a matter of considering this next year. ICGN has annual elections, so it would be something that the board could come back to next
so
year.
it'd be
if
taking
not
a
today.
year's pass on it at this point. Okay.
I'm sorry?
We'd be taking a pass for a year
Yes.
of having someone nominated to the board. Does that create a situation where it's difficult to come back the next year? Does it create any prejudice?
No, I don't see that.
Okay.
CalPERS is, I know, very highly regarded by ICGN. In fact, CalPERS called the original meeting that founded ICGN. So CalPERS has got a very, very close relationship. And I think the ICGN appreciates that the timing of our board meetings and their nominating process really bumped up against each other this time. So that's nobody's
So you don't
fault.
view it as a detriment to CalPERS to take a year and come back the next year?
I think that you've got a choice between making a fast decision, which isn't ideal, or saying, put this on hold and come back next year and have more time.
Be thoughtful about it.
And we'll be able to communicate that to ICGN so that they understand that the timing was not good for you this time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Perez.
Thank you. It doesn't sound like we meet the minimum requirements of what they're asking for. I don't know if anyone has specialty in Asian markets. Is that what you said? What were the two requirements?
Yes, the nominating committee has flagged those two skill sets that they're looking for. They don't necessarily have to come from CalPERS because there'll be other board members coming forwards as well. But they're signaling this is what we're looking for in the mix.
What were the two again?
People with experience in the corporate sector and those who have had some experience with Asia and corporate governance in Asia. But there will be several board seats open in which they want to make sure they bring those skills into the mix.
And I understand there's a motion. How do I do another motion to say we don't proceed?
Substitute.
Can I do a substitute motion?
You could offer a substitute motion.
Offer a substitute motion
Okay.
to not to proceed.
Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Brown. We'll take a vote on the substitute motion first. Yeah. Oh, Mr. Slayton, we've got a couple more speakers. I'm sorry. Mr. Miller first. Mr. Slayton. Okay.
So if we accept the first motion, if we answer affirmatively this, then there would still be a decision made. It would have to be a quick decision about who to put forward, and that decision could be that we don't put anyone forward this time and then go to next year. So accepting the first would not preclude that eventuality as well.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Right. But if we take the second, if we take the amended motion, then that would preclude even a quick decision or further discussion. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Okay. Mr. Slayton.
So two questions. First of all, does the person need to be a board member versus staff? Just want to understand what the rules are.
That's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement?
CGN, no.
Okay. The second thing is, I'm not sure we need motions. If we decide we don't want to proceed, we just don't take action on the item, and then we don't really have to take votes on motions. We just don't take action. So have we considered, in the past, have we had a staff member as a board member of ICGN?
No, we haven't had a staff member on the board, but James Andrus, who leads our financial markets work in the investment office, he does actively participate for CalPERS. He co-chairs one of their main committees. Mm-hmm. So at staff level, there's a very good amount of work going on.
Okay. Well, I think we need more time to work on this to make a good judgment on it. So I think we could just, I would suggest to the board, if we don't take action, we don't take action on the item.
Yeah. But the action request is not to nominate anyone. It's just, I mean, it's asking us to nominate, and if we say we're not going to nominate.
Right, but I'm.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
Ms. Taylor.
So that's, Mr. Jones, thank you very much. That's what I was going to say. The CalPERS board will decide whether or not to put forward a new candidate for consideration by the nominating committee of ICGN ahead of the July 2019 election. We could change the wording because the election, we won't be putting somebody forward for the election this time, it sounds like. So if we just state that we want to affirmatively state that we'll look into putting someone forward for the ICGN board within the next year, I'd like to substitute that motion on top of the other motion.
Just a minute, let me. Yeah.
Could I make just a clarifying point there? The elections at ICGN are annual, and it's normal at each round that there will be more than one seat open. So there will be an opportunity to come back. If something opens up sooner and ICGN wants to fill a slot before the year is out, I think that's an opportunity
we don't really need to vote.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And we don't need to vote.
Okay, but the second has not withdrawn his motion. Are you going to withdraw? You want to take an action on you?
Yes, then I would. I don't want to give you that opportunity.
Okay. Good.
Then I withdraw my motion as well.
Okay. So this item still would be a part of governance committee discussion because we still receive information and benefits even though we don't have someone on the board.
Right. Normally, this would have been on the governance committee agenda, but governance did not meet this month, which is why it's on the Board of Administration agenda. As Ann indicated, in the annual election cycle, we'll have a little more notice the next time, and you'll have a little more time to discuss whether you want to move forward a candidate or not. But it would be on the governance agenda.
And in the process is that if a board member has an interest, they should let me know before that committee meeting so that we can include that discussion in that item, okay? So thank you very much. So this item is basically pulled from the agenda.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we move to item number 10A, the state and federal legislation, and we have Mr. Dan Crowler on the phone. Dan, you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Good morning, Mr. President and board members. Danny Brown, CalPERS team member. I will provide you a brief state legislative update, and then I will turn it over to Dan Crowley, who is on the phone, who will provide the federal update. The state legislature is currently on spring recess. They will come back next week and be real busy because they're bumping up against a deadline to get bills out of policy committee next Friday. Both of our sponsored bills will be heard next Wednesday. I'm not anticipating any problems getting those through. We have also been busy over the last month providing technical assistance to legislative consultants and staff on a number of retirement-related bills. I did want to bring one piece of legislation to your attention that is not in your agenda material because it's currently just a proposed budget trailer bill. That would repurpose the Council on Healthcare Delivery Systems that was created in last year's budget. And what they'll do this year is they're going to rename it the Healthy California for All Commission, and this commission will focus on transitioning California to a single-payer system. As you know, Governor Newsom has been out there as far as being supportive of a single-payer system. So this, again, is his effort in that area. The commission is proposed to consist of 13 voting members and 3 ex officio non-voting members. One of those ex officio members would be the CEO of CalPERS or a designated representative. We will monitor this proposal as it goes through. It currently has not been heard in any of the budget committees, and we'll report back as needed. That ends my state update, but before I turn it over to Dan Crowley, I did want to mention a couple of comment letters that we have sent since the last board meeting. One was sent to the SEC in response to their request for comment on public company earning disclosures and quarterly reports. The SEC is interested in enhancing investor protections and eliminating reporting redundancies. CalPERS submitted a comment letter in support of the existing framework of quarterly and annual reporting. While CalPERS favors a financial reporting system focused on long-term growth and sustainability, we also value the short-term corporate transparency that quarterly reports provide. The second comment letter was sent to Health and Human Services. As I mentioned last month, HHS proposed eliminating a safe harbor protection for pharmacy rebates. In our comment letter, we requested an exemption from this proposed rule for government employee benefit plans, such as CalPERS, that are exempt from ERISA provisions. Or we also asked, if that wasn't possible, to at least delay the proposed rule's effective date into 2021. The administration recently released a memo that said that the proposed rule is still under review and isn't expected to be finalized before Medicare Part D bids are due on June 3rd. Therefore, bids to provide Medicare drugs coverage in 2020 should be submitted under the current rules. What this means for CalPERS is that we can move forward with our Medicare plan rate development process for 2020 under the current rebate rules. Both of these comment letters are on our website, and we'll continue to monitor their progress and engage as appropriate. And with that, I will stop and go ahead and turn it over to Dan Crowley.
Before you do that, we have a couple of questions. I have one.
Sure.
When is the May revise going to be issued?
It's going to be typically around May 8th, May 10th, okay. Early part of May.
So can I request that when the May revise is recognizing still it's not a final budget, but the summary of the implications for CalPERS be provided to the board after the May revise, recognizing that that's just another step in the whole process.
Sure.
Ms. Brown.
Thank you. You actually answered my question at the end, which is where can those comment letters be found? Ms. Frost, are those normally sent to the board when he writes those? Just automatically?
They are not currently automatically sent to the board. We have now placed them out on the public website. So I could send a link to that website anytime we do a new comment letter.
Be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so
Well, I was just going to mention, because you brought up the May revise, and I know Mr. Perez asked a question yesterday about the $3 billion. So the governor's proposal on the $3 billion has been heard in 2 full budget committees, 2 subcommittees, and I think overall they've been looked on favorably by both sides of the aisle. So I think what we're kind of waiting for now is for the May revise to come out and see where the actual money stands going into the next year's budget. So I think as that comes out, then we should have a better idea of where we're going to land on the $3 billion.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So go ahead and we'll have Dan Crowley provide a federal update now.
Dan?
Sure, thank you. We continue to work to implement the board directive to position CalPERS as an opinion leader on issues that impact returns to the fund. And there's been a lot of activity in the first quarter, so I'm just going to summarize what we've been doing. But before I do that,
Dan?
Yes, sir.
It's something, it seemed like you muted a little bit or something. Is it just me?
Yeah, no, I can't hear him either.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. I'm on a cell phone. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better now. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we continue to implement the board directive to position CalPERS to be effective, which of course is complicated by the current political environment. Obviously, we have a divided Congress, and that means nothing is going to be enacted absent bipartisanship. So we continue to work on both sides of the aisle. The pressure points, of course, are the Pelosi relationship with Trump and with Schumer. And then, of course, Kevin McCarthy, also from California, the House Minority Leader, and his relationship with Mitch McConnell. Those relationships are key to what is going to happen legislatively. And, of course, that's against a backdrop of the pending 2020 presidential election, where there's a broad field of Democratic candidates, and it's unknown at this point which is going to emerge. We're expecting release of the Mueller report, which will further complicate things. The summary, obviously, is out there, but the redacted full report will be coming out shortly. And that's going to precipitate continued aggressive oversight of the Trump administration by the House in particular. And the international dimension continues to be important, not only the trade discussions between the U.S. and China, but Brexit, which has now been postponed again. That will eventually lead to bilateral discussions with the UK and the US, and then, of course, the US and the EU trade talks remain. So in that context, having listened to the discussion about the ICGN, I hope that the board will come back and revisit that, because I think it's important to stay engaged. Probably less important that you have a board member on ICGN, but certainly important to remain engaged, at least at the staff level. On the legislative front, very little is likely to happen. Again, nothing is going to happen that's not bipartisan. The one must-pass piece of legislation is flood insurance that I believe will happen before the end of the Congress. There also seems to be an emerging consensus, bipartisan, bicameral consensus on the need to reform the banking laws as they relate to the marijuana industry, so we expect that to be enacted in the current Congress. And then a lot of activity on housing finance reform. Last month, the White House put out a memorandum of their intentions. On April 4th, the Senate confirmed Mark Calabria as the head of the FHFA. Both Chairwoman Waters in the House and Chairman Crapo in the Senate have made statements and are starting to conduct hearings and put forth proposals. So I think we're going to see a lot of activity on housing finance reform, which, of course, is important to CalPERS as a very large purchaser of residential mortgage asset-backed securities. So we will continue to engage on that front. And then capital formation generally. What ended last year, we had weighed in on the Jobs Act, which was not enacted, but pieces have been broken off and are being reconsidered, and we continue to engage in that discussion. On the regulatory front, the Treasury reports that implemented the Trump executive order from February of 2017 continue to be a roadmap for the regulatory agency. Just last week, OMB put out new guidance to all of the agencies on compliance with the Congressional Review Act, which is deregulatory in nature and is intended to focus on cost-benefit considerations. And I note that just in today's press, Robert Jackson, the one Democrat on the SEC, is expected to leave, which will leave Jay Clayton, an independent, and then 2 Republican commissioners. We do expect one Democrat to be confirmed, but there will now need to be a need for another. In terms of our engagement strategy, the first quarter has really been unprecedented in terms of the number of face-to-face meetings that we have had. What we try to do is whenever a CalPERS official is in Washington for whatever purpose, we try to build additional meetings on top of that. So in the first quarter, Danny Brown, Kelly Fox, James Andres, Dan Bienvenu, and Ann Simpson together had 36 individual meetings with members of Congress focusing on the new members where we have an opportunity to develop a relationship. And then we have continued to engage on the issue areas that we discussed at the offsite, the proxy advisor reform legislation. Danny Brown and I had a constructive conversation with Congressman Duffy's team on working together to improve the bill, which CalPERS has consistently opposed since it was introduced. We expect, you'll remember that the CEO of CalPERS sent a letter to Waters and McHenry supporting the Promoting Transparent Standards for Corporate Insiders Act. There has now been companion legislation introduced in the Senate by Van Hollen and Fisher, bipartisan, bicameral proposal that we expect to be enacted. And of course, CalPERS has been engaged on that from day one. Just a couple other things to note here. The Investor Advisory Committee of the SEC, on which Ann Simpson sits, voted last month by 14-6 to move forward on the Human Capital Management petition. Chairman Jay Clayton has since testified before the Senate Banking Committee on that issue, and it's a clear example of demonstrating leadership that is driving forward a regulatory discussion. So there are a number of other issues, but in the interest of time, I will stop there, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Well, we see no questions at this time, Dan. So is that concludes your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we move now to summary of board direction. Ms. Frost?
Yes, I recorded 3. The first one is to bring an agenda item to the Governance Committee related to board travel and whether board members should provide a report out on that travel, including the purpose and any learning. The second is to provide a note to the board after the May revise budget on any impacts to CalPERS. And then the third one was anytime we do comment letters, to provide a link to those comment letters to the board.
Thank you very much. Okay, it moves us to item number 10C, public comment. We have one request to speak. Mr. Harvey Robinson, please come forward, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning. I'm Harvey Robinson, Director of Health Benefits for RPEA. I'd like to speak briefly on the LIFT Wellness Program. I was an employee of CalPERS for 29 years. I was part of the Office of Long-Term Care for 6 years. And so I've also been a member of the program since 1995. So what I'd like to touch on briefly has to do with another member of the program, since deceased, who I was her conservator of her person, and she was in benefit for some 9 years. And this had to do with her slipping on a throw rug in her pantry. And so she became wheelchair bound. So the total cost to the program was over $600,000. So these costs can add up. So what I would like to encourage you and the staff, kind of echoing Tim Barron's comment of yesterday, is that for future contract negotiations with carriers, also include some type of LIFT wellness program, because someone like me who's attained age 75, am certainly going to take advantage of this when it is offered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to address this board? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I will.